Okay, everyone, welcome to episode number one of Breaking the Stigma.
Breaking the Stigma. I love that name.
Breaking the Stigma podcast. Out here with Brian Hurd. We got Brian Hurd from Cardinal Financial. You guys may have seen a while back, we had introed this podcast where we were going to come in and really do our part. And hopefully, as we go along, bring in guests that we
Yeah.
can have on the show because we want to really affect change within the industry,
Yep.
right? We want to see his growth and positive growth, and part of it, we know a big part of being able to do that is to break the stigma, and that's where we want to come in and have discussions on that, what we can do. Brian and I were just talking about some of the things that it would take to get that done right, and whether it's from techniques to philosophies to even the habits that we have within the
The
industry,
bad habits.
right?
Yeah. Some really bad
the,
habits. Yeah.
the
Even
bad
just how we
habits.
talk about things, how we talk about the industry, how we talk about the product and all of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to dive into all of that as we go through these episodes. But today we're on the heels of MHI. Brian, you were out there. You and Jay were out
Yeah.
there. We're in Florida where that was taking place. A lot of great people were there. A lot of people that want to make change. They want to
Mhm.
see things happen, and we're seeing it already take effect. And so Brian, I'd love to hear your thoughts. First of all, on what do you think? I know you guys interviewed, I think it was somebody from Clayton or something, I think y'all had
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
interview with
Gentleman
Clayton,
named
somebody
Andrew
from
Bryant from
Fannie.
Clayton and then Fannie Mae as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you see happening on that front? Because we hear all
Yeah.
about the cross mods and everything where this is going. What do you see that the role of that segment of the business doing for the manufactured home industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll try not to take 30 minutes to answer it, but and I think that that was a bit of a microcosm for MHI. This particular event, a lot of what people were talking about is, how do you bring this type of housing, these types of homes to market at scale? I mean, we can do 5 month, 10 month, but how do we do large scale community developments, that sort of thing? So it's amazing to see collaboration between the big GSEs. Freddie was there as well, but my friend Zach from Fannie, he did that discussion with Andrew Bryant at Clayton, and the cross mod product, that type of home. I mean, it's a little bit elevated, so to speak. I mean, literally and figuratively, higher roof pitches, dormers, front porches, garages, that sort of thing. And I think, if we talk about, you mentioned the stigma of a manufactured home. Well, ultimately, it's just a home. That's the most important thing. But I think everybody has this impression of what they are, which is really what they used to be. I mean, it's a rectangle sitting on cinder blocks out in the sticks, whatnot. Well, these cross mod, and really some of the more customized manufactured homes out there, they're beautiful. I mean, they compare incredibly favorably. If not in some cases, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot with some of my really good site built friends, but in a lot of cases, that the finish out is superior. And it's not designed to be. I think the other misnomer people have is that, okay, these are meant to be cheap. They're not, and it is going to be a little bit more expensive than the traditional manufactured home. But, I mean, you throw these things in a community, fully installed on a foundation, site built garage, front porches, all of that kind of stuff, fully landscaped out, especially if you're putting it in, traditional master plan style communities, you can't tell. You cannot tell
Yeah.
that this is a quote unquote manufactured home, or that it was built off-site is what I'd like to say. Um, there seems to be a lot of excitement around that. A huge amount of the guests and a huge amount of the folks that we talked to in Orlando were retailers and dealers that say, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to do, it doesn't have to be a 500 unit community, although there's a lot of it out there, but how can I do 5 or 10 or 15 of these things at a time? And I think that really, it doesn't have to cannibalize the regular side, the street retailer side of it. I think it actually helps because if we start seeing these communities pop up, we look at it and go, oh, well, wait a minute. That's just like our site built stuff. Maybe
Mhm.
it's not that scary product. Maybe it's not that single wide sitting on center blocks, out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, that was a really interesting conversation, and it's really cool to see companies like Clayton and Champion and whatnot put a lot of focus on this product, and then how do we build it? How do we build it and sell it
Yeah.
at scale? So
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's one of the things that we've got to think about as you described it there. It's normalizing, right? What I
normalizing
think
that.
what I think that will do in these communities that are coming up, or subdivisions, whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
right? Because when you hear community in the manufactured home space, you're thinking park,
Yes.
right? Manufactured home
Yeah.
park, but we're
Yeah.
talking true communities, neighborhoods now, subdivisions, and I think by bringing this product out and it's going out into market, whether it's a 500 unit deal or 10 unit
Yes.
project, it's going to start normalizing it for
I
people.
think
And
so. Yeah.
and I think that's really where we have to go with this. Are there bad habits we got to break? Are there things that we got to do better on the retail side or community side, or what, just overall in general, even from manufacturers?
All
Let's
of
be
us.
real.
Yes. Yes.
Even
Yes.
from that, certain there are things that need to improve. There's practices that need to change. There's just from a simplest appearance, right? But the more we can start getting this product out there, I did think this, what you mentioned, I did think a while back, probably even as recent as 6 9 months ago. My thought was, man, these builder developers are going to come in and they're going to really put a hurt on the street retailer.
I think
But
it's gonna
now
help.
as yeah, as now as I've thought about it, like, wait, no, I think actually it's going to help them. It's
Yeah.
going to help them because not everybody's going to want to go into that neighborhood or that area,
There you go.
but they'll be open to getting one in a different area. And so now you're going to need that retailer to satisfy that need, right? So I equate it to a sales office, right? When I was running sales teams as general manager, and you're always, whether you've got 5 or 6 or 10, right? And you're looking at hiring another one, everybody gets nervous, like, oh well, what's going to happen? But
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
what I would tell them is, look, it's just another person that's marketing, so it's going to drive more traffic. Actually, that person's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that because there's more than enough need out there for us to handle it all. So all it does is help. So now I look at that build developer in that way of, I think it's going to help propel the industry forward by normalizing it.
I'm really glad we actually started talking about this, and I hadn't planned on it. I don't think either one of us necessarily did, but I think that is an important conversation because I think so much of the way the manufactured home industry right now, majority of it, by a vast majority, is done at the street level. But if you think about it, okay, is that are the builders, you've got your Lennars of the world, and you've got all your typical builders that we look out our back, or municipalities, and we see them all over the place. And they've been doing that the same way for the longest time. But you also have a high number of build on your lot builders. They're building a set of 5, 10, 15 plans. They might do 20 a year. They might do, this is the case of the higher end custom builders. They might do thousands of homes a year. There's a lot of builders across the country that do, build on your lot. It's the same thing, maybe a little bit reverse, but I mean, you've got street retailers. All they're doing is they're taking the same product that they're building in the communities, but like you said, they not every sometimes people want a larger tract of land, they want a state, they want to be farther outside, in more rural areas. But this way, I think it normalizes both because I think you see this particular product sitting in these homes sitting in a community identical to all the other typical builders out there, And it starts to, we start to go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, if it's good enough to compete against the site built guys, it's good enough for me to go put out, in a where I want more land or a piece of land that I own or my family owns or that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think it actually should help, and I think we'll see that. It's not something to
Yeah.
be scared of.
No, for sure, for sure. And when I stop to think about it, I this past weekend, uh, yesterday actually, it was the last day of the Greater San Antonio Builders Association Parade of Homes. They had their Parade of
Saw
Homes
that,
here out
yeah.
in Bernie,
Hurd.
right, not too far outside of San Antonio. So my wife and I, we went out there on Sunday, and we were walking through these. I come from the site built world. I was actually chairman
Yeah,
of
that's
the Parade
right.
of
I
Homes
forgot
in
about that.
2007. I was chairman, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, you know, so the houses look gorgeous. We know that. We know they do great things with these. But when you stop to think about it, if you were in that world before, back then, you know, we're talking 2007, so we're almost 20 years since 18 years when I was chairman, but I've been around it ever since. We were building the Parade of Homes. They were 6, 8, 10,000 square foot houses. They were like
Not anymore.
they were like these enormous,
Palatial.
ginormous houses, right? Beautiful. I mean, just
Yeah.
and now everything that we walked into, they were 4,500, 5,500. It's still larger homes, but they're not building as big as they were. We know that it has everything to do with where we're at with pricing and things of that nature
It's
because
just like a box of cereal. You're paying more, but the box itself, if you actually look at the amount of ounces in that box, it's smaller,
that's
you know.
right. And so as we were walking through these things, the price on these now is the same that it was for that 8,000 square foot house. Um, but what I did, the whole reason I bring it up is we were walking through some of these, and one of the things that's making a big comeback in the site build, stick built world is the wallpaper, right? The wallpaper on the
I
walls.
have seen that. Yeah. I haven't seen wallpaper in a
And there
long
was a lot of
decade. Yeah.
these, right? They frame them in some really nice, some
Yeah.
really nice trim material. It looks really cool. But I was joking with my wife while we were going through these, like, hey, this is very trailerish of this. you
But
know,
see, Caesar, you're propagating the issue right there. I mean,
yes,
I
I
love that
said
you're
it to my
laughing at it,
wife,
and I
right?
love that
Joking.
you're comfortable enough to bring that up.
but the reason I bring it up is because we're always talking about how manufactured homes are built using same materials as site built construction, right? They're built to the Hud code. There's a lot more we're going to get into this as we go through these episodes. They're going to help with that. But don't forget, for anybody watching this right now that maybe sees their product and like, well, man, I don't have the full tape and textured houses everywhere like some of these other retailers. Look, what you see there with the vinyl and the gypsum, that's part of the site built world as well.
It is,
You
yeah.
know, it, it's
The
it's
site built world has stripped down dramatically, especially in that quote unquote entry level, and I'll be honest, I mean, a lot of people used to care what was behind the walls, what were the 2x4s where they glued together and whatnot, and the joists and all that kind of stuff. Now I see far less people that care about, not that they shouldn't care, but they need a inexpensive house. And you're just like you see that in the site built world, you're gonna see the same thing in the manufacturer and offsite construction world. I've got a meeting this afternoon with a developer out of Dallas that they are working on a manufacturer. I mean, excuse me, this thing is beautiful. If you were to take this home, put it in that parade of homes, I mean, people go, this is spectacular. It's smaller. You don't see many, you don't see any 4,500 square foot manufactured homes. Modular, yes, but manufactured, no. But I mean, it's oh gosh, I think it's a little over 2,000 square feet. But it is, I mean, it's multi-story, big open concept. I mean, vaulted ceilings. I mean, it is beautiful. And yeah, you have that spectrum that fits depending on what your budget is, depending on what your expectations and needs are. And that's it's very similar to the way the site built world is.
No, for sure. And so with all of that being said, you're talking about we've got cross mud product coming
Yeah.
in.
Yep.
You've got your standard manufactured
Mhm.
homes that are
Yep.
available, and then ADUs are
That's
also
making a
part
big
of
entry.
what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You know, Park model homes is part of what we do as an industry. There's there's such a wide spectrum
Yes.
that within the manufactured home industry that we should be a much bigger player in the housing game than what we
What are we,
are as an
10%?
industry.
Maybe, if even
It,
that, 10% of the
yeah,
total market.
they say anywhere between 8 to 12%. Right, last year they were saying there was 103,000 manufactured homes
Mhm. Yep.
that were built all for the whole calendar year last year.
Mhm.
And when you stop to think about it in the grand scheme of things, keeping in mind that that still puts us as a whole as a country with when you consider townhomes and the single family stick built homes that are being built in apartments, we're still negative. I think it's what, like 1.8 million homes per year. Or
Well,
higher.
yes, yes, yes. I mean, so right now, and I know this number. In fact, we talked about it briefly when we were in Orlando. The number is a little bit different depending on which economist you listen to, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 million units short of housing. Doesn't matter what kind of housing, that's just the amount of rooftops that
Mhm.
this country needs. And, how are we going to solve that? How are we going to solve it? Especially when you've got site built builders that are still taking anywhere from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 months to build. I mean, you speak to a lot more retailers than I do on a daily basis. What's the average turn time right now?
Right now, depending on the brand, they're anywhere between 3 weeks to 8 weeks
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
build time, right? Obviously, it still has to get to the property. Once it gets to the
Yeah.
property, you
All
probably
the
have
site
another
work. Yeah.
30, 45 days of work that needs to get done before you can actually move in. But it's still 3 months compared to 9 months. When we were talking to some of these builders out there at the Parade of Homes, they said, right, I asked them, if I contracted right now, I have a piece of land, when
Yeah.
can I move in? They're like 9 to 12 months. Like,
And I think 9 to 12 is probably a tiny percentage. I mean, of most of the builders, and I know a lot of those builders in the San Antonio market. I mean, they're, especially if they're building, depending on where they're at. I mean, a lot of those are taking 14, 15, 16 months to build, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Now, I mean, I think the average site built builder's probably, the higher end or the higher volume production guys are probably can get maybe as low if they're really pushing it 4 months, maybe, the higher end 8 months, but still, and that was a really common theme in Orlando, is that people think cheap, manufacturers cheap, cheap, cheap. No, it's not. But that's not even the real lure. I mean, is it more affordable, as we call it, attainable than traditional site built? Yes, it frequently is. But a huge part of the benefit is the speed to market, especially in areas that need a substantial number of units of housing. If I'm a developer and I want to aggressively cycle through my lot inventory, I'm going to look seriously at a offsite built home, manufactured home. And the cool thing is, like, we were talking about how street retailers shouldn't be intimidated or shouldn't fear these developments. Same token for site built builders. We're actually seeing a lot of traditional builders, traditional in the sense that they're doing typical site built. They're going, well, wait a minute. I actually want to start working with the Claytons and the champions. I know, I'm sure you've seen it, but Clayton's got a beautiful builder that works out, just outside of their headquarters in Knoxville that has started to shift over. He still does, as I understand it. He's still doing high-end site build, but he really wants to focus on this attainable range,
Yeah.
and he's using manufactured so there's a lot of synergy and symbiosis that works together. Like you said, there's enough to go around, and that's part of breaking down that stigma is getting
That's right.
all these different aspects of the industry to go, wait, don't be afraid of it. because people always seem to criticize what they're most afraid of. Take away that fear, it's just a home,
That's
you
right.
know. And I
That's right.
realize I get on my soapbox and I'm a little philosophical at times, but
I'm the same way,
you
man.
can't be in
People
this industry if you're not.
that's what I do all the time when I'm whether it's posting a story or doing a post online. It's sometimes I feel like I get on that soapbox as well, but it's
You have
just
to.
passion. It's a passion for
Yes,
the industry and the
you have to.
opportunity. And that's why when you stop to think about it, right? I mean, whether it's 1.8 million or 4 million, it's
Mhm.
still a lot of houses that were short,
A
right?
lot.
And so because of that, that's why I speak to people like I do and am passionate about making a change because this is the one area that could truly, this is the industry that could truly step up and really be a huge part of the solution. You see,
Yeah.
these when you whether it's a production builder, a Lennar or David Weekley, or a custom home builder, especially, they're capped. In other words, in their ability to scale because
Yeah.
their frame crews are limited. It's there's so much that limits them in being able to have enough labor to handle building any more than they already do. Okay. So the one industry that could step up and really fill that gap or take on a larger portion is the manufactured home industry. If we could just do it better, not the product is fantastic, right? It's only going to keep getting better, like you mentioned, with some of these things that are coming out. The financing, it's there, man. Whether it's FHA financing, conventional financing through people like Cardinal, or if people own land and you've got your home only finance, there's so much that's available to folks to
But we
make.
need to do better though. I mean, you're absolutely right, at Cardinal, it is a major focus of ours because what we want to do is look, there's a lot of phenomenal lenders out there. There's not that many that play in the manufactured home space yet. It's growing. But Cardinal, we want that to be a primary focal point for our construction and, that side of what we finance. And in order to do that, we have to be able to talk about it in a different way. We can't call them trailers. We can't call them mobile homes. I mean, we can, but that's not doing
Yeah,
this propagating again the stigma. We call them homes, and
right.
we need to give it our best shot at when we're talking to a family. We're helping that family get into a home just as much as if we are helping somebody in a traditional site built or one of these 4,500 square foot homes that you typically see in a parade homes. The families that come to us and need help for a $225,000 homes, they deserve that response. And it's simple things, returning phone calls, quick communication. I think that that's something we all need to do a much better job on this side of the industry. I consistently hear that from retailers. Well, my lenders aren't calling me back. They're
Yeah,
taking 2 days and 3 days. We all have to do a much better job. And that's why, Fannie and Freddie have done a great job of trying to help normalize the way this type of home is financed. 30-year fixed rates are virtually the same as if you were buying a site build. But yeah, I mean, it's how we talk about it. It's how we communicate. It is the products and programs. It is the rates. That's really important. I love, one of the things I've always really enjoyed about working with you is you talk to the sales force. I mean, you were the sales force. Now you're training the sales force.
right.
I mean, the power you have in that, César, I mean, I assume you know how much power you have, but I mean, if we're going to make changes before any of my people get a loan, you have to sell a house. The dealers
Right.
have to sell a house, so how can you help them do that? So yeah, I know I'm going to throw a question at you. How do you help your side, had the sales side of the industry destigmatize it? Because it can't be easy.
That's and that is the hard part because at the end of the day, it's like I tell them all, you're the face.
Mhm.
You're the face of the industry. Yes, you've got Clayton advertising, you've got Champion putting stuff out online everywhere, but at the end of the day, they're coming to meet with us, me,
Yeah.
you, anybody else that's at a retail center or in a community or wherever they may be. And so we are, and that's why I've said what I've said. It rubs some people the wrong way, but they know it's the truth.
Sometimes you
In
have
that,
to advance the industry.
yeah, we are the problem.
Hmm.
We are the problem. We
Yeah.
have been the problem for years. And when I say that, I mean it in the sense of we haven't taken it to the level. We haven't taken the responsibility or the opportunity as serious as we needed to. And that's why we're
Yeah.
so far behind as far as in volume of sales.
Mhm.
Had this been something that
Absolutely.
on the retail side, if the messaging were there, if somebody was out there
The
advocating and
long-term
that's
messaging, not just the
that's
here and
that's
now.
right.
Yeah.
Not just the sales meeting
Yes.
for 30 minutes, but that is the constant message. We have to improve the industry. We have to improve the
Mm.
way people think of us. We have to look better, speak better, and truly provide a customer centric approach. I'll tell you, like I'll let you in behind the curtain here. Okay. For years, it's always the message has always been we sell to trailer people, right? That's the way, that's the retail mentality of, hey, don't worry about these other people because that's not our customer. We sell to trailer people. They know how it is, and so that's just what they're expecting. But that was the case up until probably 5 years ago, especially after
Oh,
COVID, right?
yeah.
At that point,
Started
it
changing,
changed,
but
man.
yeah,
It
yeah,
changed because of the need. In other words, the lack of ability, the pricing going up as
yeah.
much as it did, rates changing like they did. Now you've got it, and you probably have better details on or data on this than I do. But the last thing I saw was about a year ago. 51% of American households average $80,000 in combined income. The household. That means that's a 250 at 6.75% rate, 30-year mortgage. That's 250, maybe $255,000 mortgage. You don't have that in the site built world unless they're going to buy something that they got to spend the next 2 years repairing, right?
Yep.
If you're
Yep.
going to buy a new home on property, it's going to be a manufactured home. So now what I tell them all is this: you will always have that 8 to 10%.
Yep.
You will always have that because that's the market right there. But we need to raise our game and we need to step up
Yes.
in everything because there's 22 million families out there who can no longer buy a site built home across the country. And that is your new buyer.
And I think that's a huge part of it. But I would also add that there's a lot of buyers out there. There's a lot more, and I'll come prepared with statistics next time. But there's a lot of studies over the last year or last couple of years that show the buyer demographic is changing, especially for manufactured. We've got a lot of buyers, especially millennial population, that doesn't have as much of that stigma.
Mhm.
They don't really care as much anyway. I can't say they don't care, but I don't think they, the studies show they don't care as much. They would, evidence by would you consider buying a manufactured home? And that number has skyrocketed, really, again, concurrent with what you said, the last 5 or so years. So, what we need to do a really good job of is not just making sure that we're properly selling and reaching the ones that can't afford the site built. Um, but I think we need to start reaching the ones that, even if they can, this may be a better option.
Right.
You know, in a lot of cases, I'm finding that, again, it is depending on where you're building, where you want to build. And then as we start to see things like municipalities and urban infill areas go, okay, well, maybe we'll look at it. There's so much good that can be done. And I think that's what I'm so excited about this series is as you mentioned, talking to different guests, and let's unpack all of the stigmas and let's
Right.
start talking about how do we fix it, and I think a huge part of it is talking about it and normalize it, as you said at the top of the podcast. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
And so that goes full circle to where we started with this, right? Which is there's a huge opportunity. There's all these families, whether they can or cannot afford a
Yeah.
stick-built home anymore.
Yep.
However, the one thing that makes it difficult for them to make that decision to pull the trigger, a lot of them are saying, yes, I'd consider one, but they're accustomed to a certain buying experience. So I take it back to
Yes.
sales again.
Yes.
They're accustomed to going to the subdivision and they're meeting with a
Yes.
person who treats them a certain way, talks to them a certain way, everything looks and feels
Yes.
a certain way. But then they go to the retail center and that's not what
I
they
was
see.
so glad you brought that up.
That's not what
Yep.
the experience we provide them. That's not who we are. And then our excuse is, well, they're coming here, so they need to understand this is where they're at. No, it's time
No,
that we as an industry meet them where they're at because of that opportunity. So we have to give them an experience that's similar because again, just like
we're
the
better.
crossbot
Yeah.
is normalizing the product, we need to normalize the buying experience.
Man, I am so glad you said that because I think that is a huge part of it. And again, you're at the front line of that, because you're selling the sales force or you're training the sales force. I mean, I think we have a whole episode where that's all we talk about. Because
Yeah.
I think whether you're dealing with it on a retail dealer level, or okay, so you have a community. We've talked about this. I think I mentioned we have a community. A good friend of mine's developing a community just north of Sacramento, and just throwing 132 units out there that happen to be manufactured homes, that's not going to cut it. How that sales staff talks about it, how the experience, if you want to compete with that space, you have to act like it.
Right.
You've said it incredibly well, César, and I think we really dedicate an entire podcast about that because I think it involves how the salesperson talks to the client. It involves to how companies like Cardinal and our loan officers talk to the client. It should be the same, if not a superior experience to what they're getting, because we still have to overcome that stigma. So we almost have to be better than what they may or may not. But I mean, I've said it I think 5 times already. I love that you called it the experience. We have to give that so much more
Yeah.
attention than what we're doing right now.
That's where I say the sales force, we have to
Love it.
catch up to what finance has
Yeah.
done, to what manufacturing has done. We need to catch up to be able to complete that overall experience for these buyers. And when we do that, man, you're going to see huge growth within
I
the
think so.
industry.
I think so.
It's just going to be it's an exciting thing to do, and I'm glad that we're a part of the forefront on
Yeah.
that, and we're pounding this pavement. We get called crazy, we whatever it may be, that's okay because people are listening. We've got people that are working with
I think
us, and
so.
we're
Yeah.
doing everything we can every single day, just like you are. And that's why I'm glad that we brought this together between you and I to start bringing this to the forefront of folks and putting it out there so that we can have these conversations, so that we can
Yes.
move in that direction that we need to go to through these ongoing episodes as we continue moving forward, man. So I'm glad to be a part of it with you, Brian. I appreciate you, man. And
Absolutely. Likewise. Yeah. Thanks
looking
for
forward
including me.
to it as we go along. And if anybody watching this has some suggestions, some questions on
Yeah.
anything that you'd love for us to discuss, or maybe bring some guests on, if you want to be a guest on the episode, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you a little bit more about it.
Challenge us.
And yeah,
If there's something you don't agree with or whatnot, same thing.
oh,
I think that for me, I mean,
that.
this is part of the reason I'm excited, César, is, I look at you, you have a massive amount of experience in this space, and I want to learn from you same way I want to learn from other people, So if you've got questions, comments, as you mentioned, guests, if you have arguments, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, let's do it.
Especially at the on the financing level. I tell everybody all the time, man, when I came in, I was in the stick world for 15 years before I came to manufactured homes.
Yeah.
And when I came into this, it still took me like a year to get comfortable with the financing aspect of manufactured homes because there's so many different programs. Every lender has a different thing for this and that, and so there's so much for us to unpack as we go along in these things to really help
100%.
empower everybody out there from retail to community to builder developer,
Well,
because
that's why we're having you, César, talk to our people. because look, I have really good loan officers at Cardinal, but they need to understand the psychology behind it,
Yep.
and what better experience than coming from the site built world, then going into the retail space and now training. I mean, I'm in the presence of manufactured royalty, so I'm excited, my friend. I love what you do, and you do it really well. So we look forward to learning from you.
I appreciate it. Likewise, Brian. I thank you, man, and I appreciate you, and I'm glad to learn from you as well. So, man, it's been a fun time here for the first episode,
Yep.
and we're gonna bring a whole bunch more stuff as we go along with this. So, man, until the next time next week, and we're gonna be putting these things out hopefully every week. But we definitely want to keep bringing value and adding
Yes.
to the experience overall. So,
Love it.
thank you, Brian. Thanks to everyone watching this. Share it. Make sure you get the word out. Break the stigma. The manufactured home
Break
editions
the
coming to
stigma.
you, baby,
Love it.
every single week. All right.
Perfect.
Y'all
All right,
take
my
care.
friend. We'll
Thanks,
see you
Brian,
next
man. We'll
week.
talk later.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.